I used to believe that if something were going to shatter your life, you'd feel it coming. Maybe in the small things, a shift in the air, a crack in the routine, a tightening in your chest that warned, this isn't going to end well. But when it finally happened to me, there was no thunderclap, no cinematic collapse, no warning, just a single message. 9 words. I want a divorce. All communication is through my attorney. No, dear Danielle. No, I'm sorry, but no reason. No mercy. Not even a cruel smiley face. Just cold, calculated distance. The kind of message you send to a stranger you owe money to, not the woman who carried your secrets, cleaned your blood from the sink after your bike accident, and stood beside you through the 5 years you couldn't hold a job or a dream. My name is Danielle Hart. I'm 34 years old. And until 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday that should have been forgettable, I thought I had a husband. His name was Grant. Tall, clean-shaven, the kind of man who made a spreadsheet for his vacations. He liked things neat, efficient, easy. I guess that's why he finally got rid of me. I was standing in our kitchen when it came through. Our kitchen, the one we remodeled last summer with the Italian backsplash I insisted on, the one he told me was a financial indulgence. I was slicing lemons into thin wheels for the glass water carafe, thinking about dinner, about laundry, about picking up the dry cleaning. You know, things wives do. Or maybe things ex-wives used to do. My phone buzzed once. One new message. It took 3 seconds to read, and less than that to make everything before it irrelevant. I stared at the screen, so long I forgot I was holding a knife. The lemon slid off the cutting board and hit the tile with a dull, final thud. It wasn't even ripe. Just pale yellow and bitter. I didn't scream. I didn't drop to the floor or throw something or call my mother. I just stood there, breathing. My brain split into 2 halves. One wanted to cry. The other took notes. I didn't reply right away. I didn't type paragraphs or ask questions or beg. That would have been expected. That would have fit the narrative he probably sold to his attorney. She's emotional. She'll lash out. Don't engage. Instead, I gave him what he never gave me. Silence. And then, precision. I typed 1 word. Just one. I see. And then I put my phone down like it wasn't the detonation of a decade. Like it hadn't just carved a trench through my chest. Like it was just Tuesday. But inside, something wasn't just broken, it was waking up. The signs had been there. Of course they had. You don't live beside someone for 11 years without knowing when they're hiding something. But it's easier to lie to yourself when the lie is warm and soft and lets you sleep at night. The sudden gym membership, after years of proudly declaring himself anti-cardio. The late-night meetings that were last minute but always seemed to fall on Fridays. The new cologne I hadn't bought. The receipts in the trash from a hotel less than 30 minutes from our house. And the biggest clue of all, how he stopped fighting with me. Not because we had found peace, but because he had already left. He just forgot to take his body with him. I walked to the bedroom in the same calm way you move when you're underwater. Everything muffled. Everything too still. I sat on the edge of the bed, the duvet still rumpled from the morning he left for an early client call. It was never a client. I knew that now. But back then, I still brought him coffee in a to-go cup like a fool. I reached for my laptop and opened our financial dashboard. Not because I was nosy. Because I was ready. Grant had always handled the big numbers. His career in finance meant he understood the language while I handled the day-to-day, groceries, utilities, the credit card bill. We had joint everything. Shared accounts, mutual investments, a house deed with both our names inked across the bottom like 2 idiots who believed in forever. I smiled as I typed in our login. He hadn't changed the password. Stupid man. Our savings stared back at me. $68,421.43 in our joint savings account. Half of that was mine. Probably more, since I was the one who skipped birthdays and resisted weekend splurges to build our future. The one who paid half the mortgage every month even when he was between jobs. I transferred $34,210.71 to my personal account. I didn't round up. I wanted the decimals to remind him I was exact, precise, that I wasn't going to let him frame me as careless. Then I went for the smaller accounts. The vacation fund he forgot we shared. The emergency reserve we started after his ACL surgery. The brokerage account we opened last year after his bonus. He insisted it be ours, even though I never touched it. I didn't clean them out. I wasn't out for revenge. Not yet. I just moved what was mine to where he couldn't touch it. Click. Transfer. Confirm. Silence. Sweet, blessed silence. I sat back in the chair, exhaling for the first time in what felt like hours. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I logged into our utilities. The electricity was under my name. So was the internet. And the water bill. I paused, letting the weight of what I was about to do settle across my shoulders. Then I hit cancel auto payment for each one. I wasn't going to keep paying to keep the lights on for a man who'd chosen darkness. I opened Amazon and closed our shared Prime account. Logged into our streaming services Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, and changed every password. Removed his devices. Changed the name of the user profile from Grant and Danny to just not yours. Then I opened our shared calendar, the one we used to sync everything from holidays to car maintenance. I deleted every event that included my name. When I was done, the screen was almost blank. I stared at the emptiness, feeling something shift in my chest. Not pain. Not yet. Just space. Wide, unfamiliar space. And then I opened the final account, our investment portfolio. The one we barely touched because we were building for retirement. He'd set it up under both our names. So I requested my portion be withdrawn and moved into my Roth IRA. He'd get an alert. He'd know. Good. Because now he'd understand that I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to evolve. There's something people don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt. It burns clean. It clarifies. It removes every illusion and leaves behind only what's real. And what was real was this. I had been married to a man who believed I was an obstacle. A phase. A placeholder. He thought he could ghost me into paperwork and dissolve our life like it was a contract gone stale. But I am not a contract. I am a storm. As I stood from the desk, I heard a ding, an email. It was from his attorney. Subject: Initiation of divorce proceedings. Grant Hart versus Danielle Hart. Even his lawyer had reduced me to versus. Versus. As if I were his enemy. So be it. I opened the email, skimmed the legal language, and noted the appointment they wanted me to attend. I marked it on my calendar, not ours, and replied politely that I'd be happy to review the documents with my counsel. I had no counsel. Not yet. But I would. And she would be sharp. And she would be expensive. I closed the laptop, walked back to the kitchen, and picked up the lemon that had rolled across the floor. I cut it again. Even slices this time. I dropped them into the water pitcher, watching them float. Then I poured myself a glass, took a slow sip, and stared out the window. A storm was coming. But it wasn't outside. It was me. By the next morning, the house felt different. Not physically. Not in any way you could point to with fingers or photographs. But the air had shifted. The silence inside wasn't soft anymore. It wasn't the quiet of peace or rest. It was the silence of war before the first shot is fired. I moved with purpose that day. No grief. No spiraling playlist of sad music or tubs of cookie dough. I didn't text friends for sympathy or journal some broken, bleeding paragraph that could one day become healing. That stage was beneath me now. I was past pain. I was somewhere colder. Somewhere sharper. You see, I had been the one who built this life. While Grant postured at client lunches and sent inflated resumes through glossy emails, I was the one covering the foundation. I made sure the lights stayed on and the health insurance stayed active. I had the salary, the benefits, the reputation, and the network. I was the breadwinner. He was the garnish. And now he thought he could cut me out like a tumor and keep feeding from the same plate? No, not today. Not ever. I opened the folder where I kept all our shared documents, logins, contracts, copies of ID, account numbers, everything organized like I had always done, because someone had to. First, I logged into the corporate benefits portal for his job. Because while he had taken the role with the fancy title, Client Development Director, the car, the hotel bookings, and even the meal reimbursements all funneled through the executive account tied to my employer. My employer. Not his. He got the opportunity because of my name. Because I vouched for him. Because I gave him legitimacy. It was my referral that unlocked that door, and now it would be my hand that slammed it shut. I revoked his access to the company car. Click. I paused just long enough to sip my coffee before I suspended his corporate travel card. Click. Then I went deeper, to the joint credit card we used for years, the one that saw groceries, plane tickets, and the time he bought me diamond earrings after cheating rumors he never confirmed or denied. I removed his authorization, replaced the password, blocked the card from use. The account was mine, he had just been a name on the statement. Not anymore. Click. Access denied. Every cancellation was a small reclaiming of territory. Every revoked permission a declaration of sovereignty. Next came the accounts he thought I'd never touch. The ones he had routed his freelance payments into. What he didn't realize was that the freelance gigs he'd been taking, as a consultant, as a strategist, as a whatever title he invented, were paid to our joint LLC. And that LLC was registered under my legal business entity. So technically, every dollar was mine to freeze. So I did. Transfer requests? Blocked. Auto payouts? Disabled. He walked out of this marriage, and with it, he walked away from the income stream I built. You want independence, Grant? Let's see how far you get without the golden leash you bit through. That evening, I lit a candle in the living room not for the ambience, but because it made the place smell like something new. Something sacred. Something finally mine. I poured myself a glass of the good Cabernet and watched a storm roll across the horizon. The house groaned softly in the wind. And for the first time since that message, since that grenade disguised as a sentence, I felt something close to calm. 3 days passed. Not a word from him. Not even an apology disguised as anger. Just silence. Until the call. I was sorting through paperwork at my home desk when my phone lit up. Not with Grant's name, no, he wouldn't risk showing weakness directly. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I answered with the practiced, emotionless tone I used with distant vendors. Danielle Hart speaking. The voice on the other end sounded tight, forced, polite, in the way that means anything but. Miss Hart, this is Clarissa Vaughn. I represent Mr. Grant Hart. I believe you've been making changes. The pause between words was like a loaded gun with the safety off. I leaned back in my chair, laced my fingers behind my head, and let the silence stretch. Then I said, as evenly as a blade sliding from a sheath, that's correct. Clarissa cleared her throat, clearly not used to this kind of indifference. Mr. Hart is currently in New York for business. It appears he's been locked out of access to his credit cards, corporate travel expenses, and associated reimbursement pathways. He has no available funds. He's unable to check out of his hotel. My lips curled, just slightly. I let my silence respond first. Then I said, that must be very inconvenient for him. There was a pause. I could feel her calculating how far to push. He has a client dinner this evening. A very important one. He's stranded. He's concerned. Tell Mr. Hart, I said slowly, that all communication must now go through my attorney. I trust you understand. Miss Hart, she started, but I cut her off. If you call me again, I said, my voice as calm as frost, I will report this number as harassment. Your client initiated this divorce through legal channels, not courtesy. That means he can live within them. And with that, I hung up. No shaking hands. No rapid heartbeat. Just the sound of my voice echoing in a room where I no longer needed to ask permission to breathe. Later that night, I opened my email. 4 messages. 2 from Clarissa. 1 from Grant's company's HR. They'd been informed his credentials were invalid. The 4th, from Grant himself. Subject line: "What the hell, Danny?" I didn't open it. I just moved it to a folder I titled Disaster Relief. Because every time he reached out now, it wasn't a gesture of reconciliation. It was a request for rescue. And I had retired from saving anyone but myself. By day 4, his name was trending on the corporate Slack channel. Turns out, not being able to pay for dinner with a venture firm rep is a quick way to ruin your executive standing. Especially when the venture firm rep is the same one who asked me 6 months ago if Grant was the real deal. Now he had no expense coverage, no hotel account, no travel reimbursement, no fallback. The man had walked into the cold without a coat and expected someone to rush outside and cover him with one made of good intentions and soft memory. But I was fresh out of fabric. On the 5th day, I opened a folder that had been buried in the back of our filing cabinet. I hadn't touched it in 2 years. It was labeled Heart, Emergency Only. Grant had created it back when we were still pretending to be adults who planned for things. Inside were copies of all the contracts he signed without reading, including one very interesting one. The prenup. See, when we first got married, I had more assets. I'd just exited a startup deal that gave me a sizable nest egg. Grant had nothing, just ideas and charm and a good haircut. We signed a prenup that, if anything, was generous to him. I made sure of it, because I loved him, but I never amended it. So now, according to the terms, if the divorce was initiated by him, and if infidelity was suspected, not even proven, just suspected, then certain protections were automatically voided. I held that paper in my hands like a weapon that didn't need to be drawn to be dangerous, because now I knew what to do next. I emailed my lawyer. Not a friend, not a favor, a shark. A woman named Lorna Quinn, who once made a venture capitalist cry during mediation. I gave her the file. I gave her the screenshots I had saved, the receipts, the timeline. I don't want to destroy him, I said, as I sipped espresso across from her in her glass-walled office downtown. But if he tries to come for what's mine, I want him to remember why he shouldn't. Lorna didn't smile. She just nodded. Done. That was the moment I shifted from defense to offense. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing. A week later, I got another call. This time from someone I didn't expect. It was Grant's brother, Paul. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe a year. But there he was, calling like a storm chaser checking in after a tornado touched down. I heard, he said. Well, I heard some of it. You okay? I could tell he didn't mean it in the performative way. He genuinely wanted to know. I'm fine, I said, and I meant it. There was a pause, then a sigh. He's an idiot, Paul muttered. You know that, right? I do now. Paul cleared his throat. He thought you wouldn't notice. He told me last fall that you'd gotten soft. That you wouldn't fight. I didn't answer right away. I just stared out the window, watching the sun bleed across the hardwood floor. Well, I finally said. He was wrong. And then, like a good plot twist, Grant tried to crawl back. A text, then an email, then a voicemail that lasted exactly 37 seconds, just long enough to sound defeated without actually saying sorry. I didn't respond. Because the thing no one tells you about silence is that it's louder than rage. Louder than threats. Louder than desperation. And mine? Mine was roaring. By the end of that month, Grant had lost the executive role. He was replaced quietly. No press release. No farewell party. Just a new face on the website and a subtle erasure of everything he used to be. They didn't even email me to explain. They just knew. He had tied himself to my star and thought he could untether without consequence. But gravity doesn't work that way. You break orbit. You drift into darkness. And I was just getting started. I always thought the worst kind of betrayal was the one you could see, the lipstick on a collar, the second phone hidden in the glove box, the long glances exchanged with someone who wasn't supposed to exist. But what I discovered next, it made all of that look like amateur hour. This wasn't infidelity of the body. It was infidelity of the soul. A calculated betrayal. Quiet. International. Financial. Let me take you back 5 days after the last call from his attorney, the one that ended with her voice shaking and my patience already gone. I'd settled into a rhythm by then. Waking up early. Meditating with my coffee instead of meditating on rage. Working with my attorney, Lorna, every afternoon. Cooking for one without sadness. Sleeping without expecting the other side of the bed to shift. I was rebuilding. And I was winning. But I hadn't looked everywhere yet. There was one more thread to pull, one last drawer in the house, metaphorical and digital, that Grant had once told me to ignore because it was just old stuff. A storage drive. A simple black thumb drive. I'd seen him plug it into his laptop hundreds of times. He said it was a backup for work files, but I had my doubts. Always had. So that morning, when the light hit just right and the silence in the house whispered to me, I opened the fireproof box where I kept our tax documents and passport copies. The one place Grant assumed I'd never go because he assumed I trusted him too much to double-check what he called boring logistics. There it was. Black. Dusty. Innocuous. The digital equivalent of a bullet with no fingerprints. I plugged it into my laptop, already half expecting to see what I'd seen before. A bunch of labeled folders, password protected, probably spreadsheets from his consulting clients that never amounted to more than a few invoices and some shallow excuses. But this time, something caught my eye immediately. One folder had a date. Not a title. Just a date. 12/04/2021. I clicked. Inside, PDFs, screenshots. A set of Excel sheets, some clearly lifted from his online banking portal. And at the bottom, a browser cache file. I opened the most recent PDF. It was a confirmation of an international wire transfer sent exactly 12 days ago. $80,000. To a woman named Camila Alvarez in Barcelona, Spain. The recipient's account was held at Banco Sabadell, with a memo field that simply read, "For the move." Not a payment for services. Not an invoice. A relocation expense. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, cold and buzzing with adrenaline. My skin went hot, then cold, then hot again. My mind tried to rationalize. Tried to fit this into a reality that didn't make me the biggest fool on earth. Was it business? No. This was personal. Every detail told me so. I opened the browser cache file, heart pounding now, the way it does right before impact. His Gmail was logged in. Somehow, even offline, the drive had saved the last cache session. I couldn't get to the inbox, but I could see fragments. Preview text. The kind you catch while scrolling too fast, the kind you're not supposed to see. One subject line hit me like a wrecking ball through stained glass. I miss your mouth. The new place is beautiful. Just need furniture. Can't wait to kiss you again. From Camila. I leaned back in my chair, one hand over my mouth, the other clenched in my lap so tightly I thought I'd break the bones in my own palm. He wasn't just cheating. He wasn't just lying. He was funding a second life. An international mistress. A new apartment. A hidden future that didn't include me. $80,000 of our money disguised as business income, hidden through international accounts, all to set her up in a city I'd once begged him to vacation in. He said he hated Spain. Said the food upset his stomach. Said Barcelona was too humid and too loud. But apparently, the only thing that ever upset him was the sound of my voice asking questions. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not frozen, not anymore. Just burning, with clarity, with purpose. Then I started downloading everything. Screenshots of every document, every transaction ID, every bank name, Every thread of evidence that tied him to this hidden life like a puppet string he thought I'd never tug. I forwarded everything to my attorney. Subject line: new discovery. Please act fast. Then I poured myself a glass of water, paced the whole way for 5 minutes, and came back to my desk. Because I wasn't finished. Not even close. If there was $80,000 wired out to a woman in Barcelona, there was more hidden somewhere else. Grant was too arrogant to stop at one betrayal. Men like him always diversify their risk. So I called in someone new, a contact from my startup days. A forensic accountant named Priya I hadn't spoken to in years, but who I remembered once tracked down $300,000 in embezzled funds using only 5 receipts and a blurry invoice. I emailed her. Within an hour, she responded. You've got full access to the audit dashboard. I'll file the legal request with your lawyer today. We'll have eyes on everything he's ever touched. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even lie down. I watched every deposit, every withdrawal, every shell company Grant had connected to. Turns out he'd been busy. 2 international accounts. 1 in Switzerland. 1 in the Cayman Islands. Both opened under the name of a business entity that no longer existed. Except they weren't empty. Not until I froze them. With Lorna's help and Priya's forensic report, we submitted emergency fraud risk requests. Legal, clean, surgical. We weren't accusing him yet. We were just investigating inconsistencies. That was enough. Both accounts were locked by the end of the week. More than $240,000 sat frozen in limbo. Money I would later learn came from bonuses tied to my name, my reputation, and my contacts. He was using my success to fund his lies. So I shut it down. Every dollar. Every pathway. Every escape route. And I did it without making a single phone call to him. Not a word. Not a warning. I wanted him to feel it the way I had felt his betrayal, sudden, quiet, devastating. 3 days later, my attorney received a letter from his legal team. It was written in a panic. The tone had shifted completely. Gone was the cool detachment. Gone was the arrogance. Now it was all legal gymnastics and trembling formality. The gist? Grant wanted to know why his funds were frozen. Why his accounts were flagged. Why the financial institutions were suddenly treating him like a criminal. He wanted explanations. He wanted mercy. He wanted access. My response was sent the same day, through Lorna's office, sealed with perfect clarity. We are conducting a financial audit based on newly discovered evidence of concealed marital assets and fraudulent misrepresentation. All further communication will be directed to the court. I didn't hear from him after that. At least, not directly. But I saw it all of the fallout. The crumbling. His company issued a formal distancing statement after the wire transfer was leaked. Someone in the finance department, probably sick of cleaning up his mess, tipped off HR and legal. Camila's apartment listing was removed from the site. Her Instagram account, once full of champagne selfies and cryptic captions about big changes, suddenly went private. He was losing everything. And I hadn't even touched my real strategy yet. Because exposure wasn't enough. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted consequence. The media got a hold of it before I could. Apparently, one of the venture firms we'd both pitched to last year was doing due diligence for another deal when Grant's name popped up on the blacklist. Quiet circles. Rich people. Private whispers. It was enough. One outlet ran the headline, Consultant's Divorce Uncovers $300,000 Hidden in Offshore Funds. The article didn't name me. But it didn't need to. He knew. Everyone knew. And still, I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I didn't call friends to say, I told you so. I just went back to work. I filed the papers to dissolve our joint business entity. I applied for sole ownership of the intellectual property we had once pitched together, the pitch that was 90% mine and 10% his presentation voice. I met with my accountant, reset my retirement strategy, and removed every trace of his name from anything tied to my future. It took 32 days. 32 days to surgically extract him from my financial body. And on the 33rd day, I woke up, made coffee, and smiled for no one but myself. Not because it was over, but because I had reclaimed what was always mine. Not just the money, not just the peace, but the power. And now? Now the game has changed. Because you don't walk away from someone like me and expect silence. You don't betray a woman who built your foundation and expect her to stand still while you pack your things. You don't fund another life in another country with her sweat, her network, her name, and think she won't trace every dollar, every keystroke, every lie. Grant is no longer just broke. He is exposed. Not because I screamed, but because I didn't have to. Because I fought the way women like me always fight, strategically, thoroughly, without mercy, and with receipts. And the best part? I'm not done. It was almost poetic, the way the courthouse looked that morning, washed in gray light, columns gleaming like polished teeth, the sky just cloudy enough to threaten rain without delivering it. I arrived early, not because I was eager, but because I had spent too many years waiting for a man who always showed up late, always blamed traffic or stress or someone else's incompetence. Today, I wanted to witness, firsthand, what it looked like when a coward was forced to face the reality he could no longer rewrite. The courtroom was cold, silent, and sterile, just the way I needed it. My lawyer, Lorna, sat beside me in her usual sharp-cut navy suit, eyes scanning the folder she'd reviewed a dozen times, but still wanted to hold like a sword unsheathed. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I had spoken with my actions, with documentation, with evidence so devastating it didn't need embellishment. When the doors opened and he walked in, it wasn't the man I'd once married. His hair, once perfectly combed and curated like a resume in motion, now hung limp and uneven, like he had tried to trim it himself in a hotel bathroom. The tailored suits he used to brag about were replaced by an off-the-rack jacket, wrinkled and one size too big. His tie was crooked. His eyes darted everywhere except at me. He looked like a man who had slept in his car and hadn't slept well. Grant was unraveling. I watched him walk to his table, clutching a worn briefcase like it might suddenly produce salvation. His lawyer, Clarissa, looked pale and tight-lipped, clearly aware of what was about to happen but unable to stop it. She gave a curt nod to the clerk, then turned to whisper something urgent to her client. He didn't seem to hear her. He just kept fidgeting, blinking too much, licking his dry lips like a man about to face the gallows. He still thought he could negotiate. He still believed this hearing was about compromise. But today wasn't about compromise. Today was judgment. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with zero patience for theatrics, opened the session with practiced monotony. Names were read. Dates confirmed. Acknowledgments of receipt. Then came the moment we had all been waiting for. "Miss Quinn," the judge said, glancing down at the stack of documents, "you've filed supplemental evidence on behalf of your client, Mrs. Danielle Hart?" Lorna stood without a tremble. "Yes, Your Honor. This includes verified documentation of financial infidelity, evidence of fraudulent concealment of international assets, and material breaches of fiduciary duty during the course of the marriage." Clarissa shot to her feet. "Your Honor, we object to this being introduced as punitive. My client was unaware these documents were even in question." The judge held up her hand like a blade. "Ms. Vaughn, you'll have a chance to respond. For now, I'll allow Ms. Quinn to proceed." And just like that, the trap we had set over the past 45 days was sprung. One by one, Lorna laid it out, a masterclass in forensic demolition. The offshore accounts, frozen by judicial order. The fraudulent withdrawals, routed through shell companies Grant created during our marriage but never disclosed. The $80,000 wire to Camila Alvarez in Barcelona, logged under business relocation, complete with matching love letters found in cached files. The documents Grant had failed to produce during discovery, conveniently forgotten, despite digital timestamps proving he had accessed them within the last month. And the final blow, the clause in our prenup, clearly stating that concealed marital assets, once discovered, nullify all protections previously afforded to the concealing party. I didn't have to say a word. I just sat there, hands folded, watching as the man who once told me I was too careful with details realized that details were what would bury him. Grant began shaking his head, mumbling under his breath, "No, no, no," as Clarissa reached into her briefcase for a tissue she should have saved for herself. His lawyer asked for a recess. Denied. She requested an amended financial review. Denied. She argued that the account in Barcelona had nothing to do with his client's intentions, that it was personal, not marital. Lorna stepped forward, dead calm. "Intentions are irrelevant," she said. "The funds were joint. The deception was deliberate. The consequence is absolute." And with that, the judge issued her ruling. "In light of the substantial evidence presented," she said, "and due to the clear violation of marital financial transparency, the court hereby rules in favor of Mrs. Danielle Hart." The silence that followed could have frozen the blood in anyone's veins, but not mine. I was heat incarnate. The house located at 47 Wilmore Terrace, the judge continued, shall remain the sole property of Mrs. Hart. The vehicle, a 2022 Mercedes E-Class sedan, previously used by Mr. Hart, is awarded to the petitioner, Mrs. Hart, as equitable compensation for diverted funds. Clarissa made one final plea for compromise. The judge cut her off with finality. Furthermore, this court finds Mr. Hart liable for damages totaling $210,000 to be paid in full over the next 24 months, including all legal fees and penalties for concealed assets and financial misconduct. It was done. Not just the divorce. Not just the reckoning. But the man I had once built a life with, reduced now to a cautionary tale whispered in corner offices and legal forums. He sat slumped, unmoving, as if the verdict had reached somewhere deeper than bone. He wasn't just broke. He was branded. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like rain had finally remembered how to fall. The sidewalk gleamed in the distance, the sky cracked wide above me, and still, I didn't flinch. I didn't look back. I didn't even bother to remove my sunglasses. I walked down the courthouse steps with the kind of composure that doesn't need rehearsals. Halfway down, my phone buzzed in my hand. A single message. From my private banker. "Your new account in Zurich is live. Welcome aboard." I stopped walking. Just for a second. Not because I needed to. Because I wanted the moment to register. Then I smiled, not the soft smile of relief, but the exact one you give before you shut a door forever. Everything I had lost, the time, the trust, the illusion, had finally been converted into something untouchable. Freedom. And the best part? No one saw it coming. Because they thought my silence meant surrender. It was the start of the storm. Like stories where women win? Subscribe. Because this isn't the last time someone underestimated the quiet one.